So I'm here in the cemetery, visiting with my grandmother, as I like to do from time to time. I find it peaceful. And, while in the presence of those who passed on, I thought I'd share some thoughts about Shannen Doherty. Some little interesting anecdotes about my relationship with her movies and her television shows over the years. I think the first movie, definitely the first movie I ever saw with Shannen Doherty, and it was Heathers. And I saw that when I was 9 or 10. I think if I was 9, I was very close to turning 10, I believe. And I had a babysitter at the time, and she let me see a little bit of it on TV, but I didn't get to see much. I saw maybe up until the scene where Kurt and Ram are in the woods. I seem to remember leaving off around that point. And for the longest time, I really wanted to see the whole movie. But I couldn't because I was so young. My parents, of course, wouldn't rent the movie. So I'd have to wait and see if it would come on TV again. And I remember getting to tape it on TV one time. I had to leave it taping because I probably had to go to bed early or something. And someone changed the channel on me. Back in the day when we want to record something off TV and someone changes the channel and you're out of luck. And then when I was 14, it finally came on again, and I was able to record it in full. But I erased a couple of hours of home videos in the process. So like an entire summer with the Irish exchange student gone. I'm sure we still have it on one of those little camcorder tapes somewhere, but we don't have it anymore on VHS. I like to say that I felt sorry about that, but I think it was worth it. I really like that movie. That's one of my favorite movies. There are movies that I wanted to see when I was a kid, and years later I ended up watching them when I turned 18 and started working at Blockbuster, like Candyman, Dr. Giggles. And I was like, these movies weren't so great. I was just a dumb kid, stupid little kid, thinking that they were worth my time. And maybe they would have been when I was 9, but, at 18, they weren't that good. They didn't impress me much. But Heathers was definitely worth the wait. I wouldn't recommend a young kid watch it. I wouldn't, especially nowadays. Gone in the Night was another good movie of Shannen Doherty's. I'm familiar with the true case. I read the book that was the inspiration for the movie, based on the true case of Jacqueline DeWalby, who was kidnapped from her bedroom in the middle of the night. For the longest time, the police were convinced that her stepfather... No, not stepfather, adopted father, because when her mother married a new guy, he adopted Jacqueline, and they had a little boy together. And then after Jacqueline died, they had another little girl. And the police assumed that he did it. But they eventually had to let him go because they just didn't have the evidence. They never did catch her killer. Very sad story. And I remember hearing it on the radio around 1991. I think it was probably on Unsolved Mysteries on the radio. And I think I was sitting in the car with my dad, waiting for my friend to come out of her house, to come over to my house for a sleepover. And I seem to remember being really scared after that someone would break into our house in the middle of the night. I think that case did affect me. I was really into true crime, and I think it fascinated me, but it also really disturbed me. And I remember asking my babysitter once, why do people do horrible things to each other? And she just looked at me like, I don't know why you're asking me this. What's wrong with you? But yeah, I like that movie. It was a mini-series, a 2-part mini-series with Shannen Doherty and Kevin Dillon. It was a really good movie. Also interesting note, I think Gone in the Night is the reason why I bought a multi-regional DVD player, a portable one, that I could carry around so that I could buy the DVD, because it was like it was a DVD that only played in other regions, and so I had to buy a multi-regional player to play it. And then as it turned out, it came to Tubi, so it was all in vain. But I didn't watch 90210 at first, when it first came out. I was too young. My friends, I'm pretty sure, were watching it in 94-ish, because I remember there being a bonus question on one of our tests in 6th grade. It was 5th or 6th grade. I'm pretty sure it was 6th grade, where our teacher asked us what was the name of that little hangout that the kids would go and eat at in 90210, and everyone seemed to know it but me. I remember looking over on someone else's paper so I could cheat. I didn't claim the credits because I was still an honest kid, but I did cheat and look at someone's paper. And I think I still botched it. I think I read like the Plum Pit or something like that. I don't know. But yeah, I went to Catholic school, and Catholic school was crazy. I mean, like, they were giving us bonus questions about 90210. They were having us watch The Client down in the pre-K classroom when we were in, like, 6th grade. Also at church, like in CCD, they showed us, like, the first 15 minutes of My Cousin Vinny before realizing, oops, we shouldn't have done this. And then they had to change it to something like Hoosiers. But yeah, like, my experience with Catholic school and church was not at all what you would expect someone's experience with that to be. Very laid back, always playing games. I did get into 90210 later. I feel like it was in high school, but I can't really remember. I remember my favorite characters at first were Brandon and Brenda. I really liked them. Maybe I thought Jason Priestley was cute, I don't know. But I always suspected that there was something a little bit off about their relationship, that like they were a little too close. And this may have been around the time I was reading V.C. Andrews, but I kind of get the feeling it was before that, like even before that. And then it's funny because years later I saw all these promotional pictures that they took with each other, like Jason Priestley, Shannen Doherty, and Luke Perry, and it's Shannen Doherty and Jason Priestley who were all over each other, like they're the ones who were the couple. It was weird. And it's funny, Shannen Doherty actually mentioned that on a podcast, so I guess, I wasn't just a weird little kid. I guess I really did pick up on something that was there. But, they're not really brother and sister, so, they're... But yeah, I did start watching 90210 as I got a little older. I never really got into the later seasons. I really liked, 1 through 4, and those are the ones I own on DVD. And I seem to remember having a teacher who, talked about 90210 in class, and, who's gonna watch the final episode, that kind of thing, big cultural moment right there. I did watch the new No One Would Tell, with starring Shannen Doherty. She was the only actor in that movie that I recognized, other than Mira Sorvino, who had a small role as a judge. And I have to say, I really liked the remake. I thought in some ways it was even better than the original, although, the original has that nostalgic value for me. Candace Cameron, Fred Savage, 90s vibe. I mean, I do like the original, but the remake was really good. I thought the music was much better in the remake. The original had some, cookie cutter music in it, music that I'd heard in other Lifetime TV movies. The theme song itself was, almost exactly the same as the theme song in Dying to Belong, only with different lyrics. Instead of, saying, no one would tell, no one would tell, it was and now you're dying to belong, it's they couldn't even come up with an original song. But yeah, the new one, I thought they made some interesting changes. I liked having an actress I wasn't familiar with in the lead role. Made it seem more real. That's another movie that's based on a true story, very horrific true story. Sad. I think she was younger in real life than she was in the movie. In real life, she was 13. Yeah, horrible what happened. But very sad story. And more local to me, kind of local to me, just a couple states over, I think. I saw a little bit of Obsessed with William Devane and Shannen Doherty, which Shannen Doherty plays a woman obsessed with her older lover. I'm a big fan of William Devane. I first saw him in Nightmare in Columbia County, which is also known as Victim of Beauty on Netflix. That's based on a true story that I'm pretty familiar with. I read the book by Dawn Smith Jordan. Very sad story about a young woman who was killed in the 80s, and her sister, Dawn Smith Jordan, wrote a book about her years later. I think she wrote the book a little after the movie came out. Yeah, so I like William Devane because he reminds me of watching TV movies back in the day. Familiar face. I only saw pieces of Obsessed, so I can't really comment on it. Seemed like a pretty standard, formulaic movie, but I'm sure that Shannen Doherty did the very best she could because she was a very passionate actress. I did not watch the remake of Dying to Belong with Shannen Doherty. I just couldn't bring myself to pay the money. I think I tried to watch it when I had the Lifetime subscription, but I couldn't for some reason. I don't know. But I never did watch the remake of that. You know, the original remains a good memory from childhood. Well, I wasn't a child at the time. I was in high school. But I remember my dad and I would joke about that title for the longest time, Dying to Belong. We just thought it was so cheesy. You know, but, I mean, you know, that's the thing with Lifetime movies. Cheesy titles, sometimes they just give away the entire plot, and that's okay. Because nobody watches a TV movie for the surprise ending. Sometimes, but very rarely. Most times you know everything that's going to happen, and then you rewatch the movie over and over again. And now for the 6 Degrees of Luke Perry. Did you know that Luke Perry was in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the movie, with Hilary Swank back in 1992? Christy Swanson played Buffy. And then years later, Shannen Doherty remade Dying to Belong, which was originally starring Hilary Swank. So Hilary Swank was in the first Dying to Belong, and then years later, Shannen Doherty was in the remake. Shannen Doherty, as we know, was in 90210 with Luke Perry. So there you go. There's the connection between Luke Perry, Shannen Doherty, and Hilary Swank. So that's it. Those are my thoughts of the day while sitting in my car in a graveyard. I just watered my grandmother's grave. I should have brought some diet soda. She was a big fan of diet soda and just poured it on her grave. I don't know if the flowers would have liked that. I think my grandmother would have appreciated it. But I poured just some water on her grave and just had a few peaceful moments remembering some good cinema. You know, because that's my relationship to Shannen Doherty was purely through the screen, and I don't want to minimize that. I think that's a very valid relationship to have with a celebrity. You know, your relationship with their work and your response to their work. And I'll leave it to those who knew her to comment on her life. But from what I heard her say, I did really admire her, especially in her last year or so, just like hearing what she had to say. And I remember watching something on the news and someone was saying, you know, now here's a person that we all need to look up to, Shannen Doherty. I was like, amen. Amen. I felt like she was a very strong woman just from what I saw of her. She reminds me a little bit of another woman who died in her mid-40s, and she died of breast cancer as well. It was very sad. She was diagnosed, she thought she had stage 1, found out soon after it was actually stage 4. After a 5-year battle, she died. I really liked her. She was a huge fan of Heathers. I remember we would talk about Heathers. Like, I would post things about Heathers or Winona Ryder, and she would love my statuses. I really miss, you know, talking with her. I hate cancer. But yeah, she looked a little like Shannen Doherty. Not really. Her hair was nothing like Shannen Doherty. She had like red hair, short red hair, but something about her face reminded me of Shannen Doherty. And it might just be in my imagination. I don't know. Maybe they met up in heaven, and maybe they're talking about Heathers. That's a nice thought. Now I'm at the mall, and I thought this is a great atmosphere to talk a little bit about Mallrats. I was not a huge fan of Mallrats. I really liked Clerks. I watched Clerks when I worked at Blockbuster, and I guess I could really relate to it. I was a clerk at Blockbuster, and I'd been a cashier at CVS, and I'd been a cashier at the local grocery store. So, you know, I really understood that culture. So I really liked that. Mallrats, I feel like I should watch it again because, you know, 90s mall culture is just very nostalgic for me. I feel like my younger brother watched that movie before I did, but I did watch it. And Shannen Doherty did really well in that part, as she always does. And I love Kevin Smith. In 1995, when Mallrats came out, I had a Irish exchange student that summer, and then she and my friend from school and another young girl who was from Ireland as well, who had come up as part of the exchange program. we all would go to the mall together and shop there, and we'd go to Woolworths. But we weren't supposed to say that we went to Woolworths. We did it, but we weren't allowed to say it. I made the mistake of telling some boys who were trying to hit on us that we shopped at Woolworth, and I got a stare for that. I got, the stare. Now, as an adult, I look back, those guys were creepers. They were really weird. They complimented us on our funky bandanas. And I think even then we knew they were creepers, but, now as an adult, I'm like, They kind of followed us all around the mall that night. But yeah, I have good memories of going to the mall. So Mallrats, that's a movie I'll have to rewatch. I didn't watch Girls Just Want to Have Fun until I was an adult. I watched it a few years ago. And it's one of those movies where, I'll occasionally forget that Shannen Doherty was in it. Now I won't. I will never forget again that she was in it. But in the past, I think I have forgot. Because she wasn't, Sarah Jessica Parker. She's the one that you remember. Helen Hunt, maybe. I liked Girls Just Want to Have Fun. It wasn't great. It was like another Footloose, basically. It's like 15 years later, they'd be releasing a bunch of dance movies, like Center Stage, which nobody ever remembers. Save the Last Dance, that's the one that people talk about with Julia Stiles. Didn't really care for that one. I wasn't a fan. I mean, I liked watching dance movies, but then I look back and I'm like, I watched the movie, I'm like, this is so dumb. Such a formula movie. But fun. Like, really fun. Great music. Center Stage had some great music. Specifically, the Red Hot Chili Peppers version of Higher Ground. That was great. And, Canned Heat. A lot of people remember Canned Heat from Napoleon Dynamite. Canned Heat was also in Center Stage. Many people may remember that Shannen Doherty played Jenny Wilder in Little House on the Prairie. And that was probably right around the time that V.C. Andrews released her book Heaven, which was part of the Castile series. It may have been a little before her book came out. I'm not sure. Let me look that up. I have my phone on me. Let's see. Little House on the Prairie and Shannen. But yeah, Heaven came out in 1985. She was on the show from like 82 to 83. So yeah, the book came out a little after that. And the Heaven on the cover of V.C. Andrews' book looked a lot like Shannen Doherty's. On that one book, Heaven, that the girl in the keyhole looked a lot like Shannen Doherty. I'm not entirely convinced that they didn't model that girl after Shannen Doherty, and others have thought the same thing. So it's not just me. So if you've never read that book, check it out. Let me know what you think. And if you have read it, still let me know what you think.